Hey everyone, Chris here. Today I'll be listing 10 philosophy books that I believe are simple and arguably essential for getting into philosophy. And by essential I just mean that they cover topics that are very important to someone getting into philosophy. And this video is a sequel to a video I did previously, which was the top 5 simple and essential books for getting into philosophy, which were my top 5 at that time. But I've read a bunch of philosophy books since then, and I've decided to add to it. So here's 10 more. And in order to make this list, it obviously has to be a book that I've read. So books I haven't read won't be included. And also, it needs to be simple enough to be interesting and understandable to someone who, I'm assuming that maybe this is the first philosophy book that they're picking up. So it has to be meet that condition. And also, and because of that, this isn't a list of my top 10 favorite philosophy books. It's the top 10 books, in addition to the 5 I already listed, that I think are very good reads for someone who's getting into philosophy. And also with this video, I've tried also to cover a wider range of philosophical topics, because philosophy is such a broad subject and covers so many different things, that hopefully with the 10 from this video and the 5 from my previous video, there'll be at least one book that covers one philosophical topic that will be good for someone getting into philosophy, interested in whatever that topic may be. So without further ado, let me start going down the list. So the 10th book on my list of 10 is Metaphysics, A Very Short Introduction. And this is by Stephen Mumford, and it's part of the Oxford collection of a very short introduction books. There's tons of them. They have dozens, maybe even hundreds of different very short introduction books. I actually have one other one on Schopenhauer's philosophy, the green one there. And this book, like all the very short introduction books I've seen, are just that. It's a very good, compact, short introduction to a topic. And I haven't read the very short introduction to philosophy one that they have, so you might want to check that one out too. But I really like the metaphysics one, and I think it's a good idea to check this one out, because metaphysics is obviously a very important topic in philosophy. And this just gives a great, a short introduction to that will really make you think. And I've also read or come across several different introduction to philosophy books, introduction to metaphysics books, or metaphysics textbooks. And this is the best one that I found that is really good for someone just getting into philosophy or just getting into metaphysics even. So that's number 10. Number 9 is by Andrew Lin, Classic Political Philosophy for the Modern Man. And he has 2 other similar books like this one, but this one is Classic Political Philosophy. And this is obviously political philosophy, which I didn't include in my last video, so I wanted to make sure I threw one in this one, because political philosophy is obviously a very important and relevant branch of philosophy today. And I think that out of the many political philosophy books and intro to political philosophy books that I've read or come across, this is the best one for beginners. Each chapter, Andrew Lin gives it basically an intro and an opening to whoever the essay or article is, the primary source reading that's included. And he has selections from Plato's Republic, Aristotle's Politics, Tocqueville's Democracy in America, John Locke's Second Treatise of Government, as well as his letter concerning toleration. So a really good, simple, compact, easy introduction to political philosophy book. So that's number 9. Number 8 is A Guide to the Good Life, The Ancient Art of Stoic Joy by William B. Irvine. And I've read numerous books on Stoic philosophy, both primary source and more modern. And I think that this is the best intro to Stoicism book there is, which might be a contentious statement given some of the more primary source things like Marcus Aurelius' Meditations and whatnot, and Epictetus. But I think if you're really just starting in Stoicism, that Irvine's A Guide to the Good Life is the way to go. And a note on Stoicism being included in this top 10 list, is I think that this is a really good introduction to sort of life philosophy, more not practical, but more everyday relating philosophy. And I think that this book is a really good doorstop for philosophy and for someone getting into philosophy. So go check out William Irving's Guide to the Good Life. That is number 8. Number 7. Okay, number 7 is Happy Lives, Good Lives by husband and wife Jennifer Wilson Mulnix and M.J. Mulnix. And this book is a philosophical examination into the philosophy of happiness. So it asks, what is happiness? Can happiness be measured? And also, to a certain extent, how could one achieve happiness? And it discusses Aristotle, Plato, more modern philosophers like Martha Nussbaum, Fred Fellman, people like that. And both the Mulnixes also have a companion book, which is an anthology, Theories of Happiness, which is also a very good book. But I've decided to include this one in this list because I think it's a little simpler and also perhaps even more engaging with the back and forth between these different views. So if you're interested in philosophy of happiness, or you're trying to get into philosophy and you think that might interest you, I would suggest you check out the Mulnix's Happy Lives, Good Lives. And that was number 7. So now to number 6. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor E. Frankl. This one, some might argue, is cheating a little bit because Frankl isn't by profession a philosopher. He was a psychologist. But I think that almost everyone can agree that this book, as well as Frankl's psychology, psychotherapy, logotherapy is what it was, his psychiatric school is very philosophical in nature. So Viktor Frankl was a Jewish man, Jewish psychologist during the Holocaust, or before and after the Holocaust, but he was unfortunately in the Holocaust. And he talks about how his logotherapy and his sort of existential considerations got him through the Holocaust. And this is his story of that. And Frankl has a bunch of good books. I've read 3 of them, but this one is definitely his most famous one. With this, the cover says more than 12 million copies in print worldwide. And it's also the easiest, the most simple, and a good introduction to not only Frankl's logotherapy, but also existential philosophy in general. Though obviously Frankl's logotherapy and existential philosophy aren't identical, still, it's a good book to get into philosophy. So, Man's Search for Meaning, and a good book in general. So that was number, I can't keep count. That was number 5. Wait, that was number 5? No, that was number 6. This is number 5. Sorry, I can't count. Philosophy student. So, number 5. What is this thing called science? By A.F. Chalmers. Alan Chalmers. And this is actually one of 3 texts that I used in a philosophy of science undergraduate class a few semesters back. And I think that it is an excellent introduction to the philosophy of science. And I think that the title itself, What is this thing called science, is a really great philosophical question on its own. Because, you know, science is used both in philosophy, in politics, really in anything, to invoke some sort of authority and to invoke some sort of almost absolutism. And I think that people don't really question, not skeptically, but critically, I guess you could say, what exactly is science? What is this thing that we're all talking about? And I think that the philosophy of science and Alan Chalmers' What is this thing called science is a great job of asking that question, and he does so at an introductory level. So if you're interested in epistemology, philosophy of science, check out my number 5, What is this thing called science? Alright, number 4. Okay, so this one is a little tougher, but I think it is simple enough. René Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy. If you take an introduction to philosophy class, you will most likely either read Descartes or you'll read about Descartes. But that is because Descartes is extremely important and influential in philosophy. And he's a very great writer, very great philosopher. Now, while I list this in my number 4 slot, and there are several meditations which are kind of like chapters in this book, I'm really only recommending in this list the first 2 meditations. Obviously you can read the rest, but the first 2 meditations are sort of the heart of Descartes in terms of being at an introductory level. And if you, like I said, if you read him in an Introduction to Philosophy class, you will most likely only focus on the first and the second meditation. So my number 4 is the first two meditations in Descartes' Meditations on First Philosophy. Okay, number 3. The Meaning of Life, a Reader by E.D. Klemk and Stephen M. Kahn. And this is an anthology which features several different essays, all concerning the meaning of life. This is arguably one of the quintessential philosophical questions. This is one of the purposes of philosophers, is what is the meaning of life? And I've read a few books on this topic, or that somehow talk about this topic, and I think for someone getting interested in this topic, or wants to explore philosophy through this topic, this The Meaning of Life reader by Klemk and Kahn is your best bet. There's some great essays in here from some great philosophers from all over history, Bertrand Russell, Arthur Schopenhauer, just really good essays, really good readings. So that is my number 3. So number 4. Okay, so my number 9 was Andrew Lin's Classic Political Philosophy for the Modern Man. My number 2 is his Classic Philosophy for the Modern Man. Now, his Classic Philosophy for the Modern Man in structure is very similar to his Classic Political Philosophy, but the only differences being is this concerns more philosophy in general, or more specifically, it's more like life philosophy and how to achieve happiness. And this features readings from Plato's The Republic, Aurelius's Meditations, Machiavelli's The Prince, Nietzsche's Beyond Good and Evil, Emerson's Spiritual Laws, and it just has a lot of great primary source and very simple readings for getting into philosophy. So number 2 is Andrew Lin's Classic Philosophy for the Modern Man. Excellent read for beginning philosophers. And my number 1 pick for getting into philosophy books is Plato's Symposium, which is one of Plato's many dialogues. It's probably my favorite dialogue, though the Phaedo comes close, though I haven't read all of Plato's dialogues. I just mean out of the ones I've read. And in this one, this very famous one, Socrates and several of his friends basically sit around and ask the question, what is love? And they try to talk about what love is. And I think it is a very interesting philosophical discussion, one of my favorite philosophy books. So that is my number 1 pick, Plato's The Symposium. So thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed my 10 additional contributions to my now top 15 list of simple and essential books for getting into philosophy. Thank you for watching.